that, I'll turn it over to you, Tony.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Welcome everyone again. We are all here to talk about planned giving fundraising, right? Planned giving in the pandemic era. So I know that you're all involved in fundraising in one respect or another. Therefore, you understand the importance of the ask. If you aren't asking for gifts, you aren't getting gifts. I'd like to share the story of my very first ask, which was in 7th grade, when I had a terrific crush on Lisa Maggio. And I chose to ask Lisa to go steady at our 7th grade dance. We were all there in the gymnasium with that high gloss varnish on the floor, poisoning everybody. I had on my powder blue leisure suit with the contrasting thread on the lapels. My shirt was a fine Kiana polyester. My shoes, blue plastic from Buster Brown. So if there had been a fire, I wouldn't have burned. I would just smoke and melt. I saved my last dance for Lisa. Lisa saved her last dance for Albert Moran. So I had the pain of watching that spectacle. When it was over, I went up to Lisa in the middle of the dance floor, and I got so close to her that I put my hands on her shoulders, and I asked her, Lisa, would you go steady with me? With all her 7th grade charm and sweetness, she said, you are standing on my dress. Years later, Albert and Lisa married. Then, sadly, they separated and divorced. I'm an attorney, and I handled that divorce. I handled it for Albert, and Lisa has been paying the price ever since. There's one person laughing anyway. Welcome again. My asks have gotten much better since 7th grade, so you're in the right place, don't worry. And again, I'm glad you're with us for planned giving in the pandemic era. My thanks to JMT Consulting for hosting us. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't all be here. So thank you, JMT. Let's get started. Here's what we're going to talk about today with our time together. What this thing called planned giving is, who your best prospects are, where to start your planned giving program, how planned giving fits in our pandemic era now. I've got some marketing strategies, tips for you, a little continuing ed if you'd like to learn more about planned giving, and the all-important Q&A. That puts the focus on what you're thinking about, how what I just talked about applies for you. So please do, as Nicole asked, please do put your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to leave plenty of time to answer them at the end. Nicole will help me curate them. So here's my definition of planned giving. This is a way for folks to give to your nonprofit, but they're considering very personal factors when they're deciding whether to include your organization in their long-term plans. And those factors are those plans. They're thinking about their estate plan and their retirement plan. They're thinking about how you can fit alongside the donor's husband, wife, children, grandchildren, right alongside loved ones. Can you fit in there? And if so, how? So much more personal factors go into this decision than the decision to write a check. And I don't care if that's a $50 check or a $50,000 check, $500,000 check. The factors are different. There's longer term considerations about making a planned gift to your work. And for today, planned giving means cash to your nonprofit at the donor's death. There are other planned giving methods, and I'm going to breeze through a bunch of them because we're not focusing on them. We're focusing today on gifts by will. And that type of gift, a gift in someone's will, that's not cash until that person has died. I call this get a finger, grab a hand fundraising, because when you're talking to the right prospects, and very momentarily, I'm going to identify those prospects for you, then you're just asking those committed, loyal folks to take another step with you, to invest just a little deeper in your work. So take any of these iconic brands and thousands of others. You buy a seat on Delta. Does it stop with the seat? Oh, that's the beginning. That's the beginning. Now, of course, at Delta, it's transactional. That's not the kind of fundraising we're doing. But there are parallels. There are lessons we can learn from, let's say, the Delta experience. So what do they offer after the seat, right? The Wi-Fi package, a seat with more legroom. You want to pre-check your bags? Do you want to board early? Do you want the mileage accelerator? You want to get bonus miles for your trip, right? So they've got a little bit and they're asking for more. And they know you're committed because you've bought the seat. And that applies to any of these other brands. Starbucks doesn't end with coffee. That's the beginning. There's music, there's t-shirts, there's food, there's an environment, there's coffee accessories, etc. You get the idea. So that's parallel to what we're going to be doing when you're talking to the right folks. And who are those best folks? Your best prospects for planned giving. These are the people who love your work. They love it so much that they are the committed, loyal donors to your work. And we know that from their giving histories. So that's where you go. You look to their giving histories. You're looking for the consistency, that loyalty. Maybe it's reflected as 20 gifts in 15 years, right? Multiple gifts in some years, or 20 gifts in 20 years, or 20 gifts in 22 years. That's still a very committed, loyal donor, assuming those last 2 years where they didn't make a gift, assuming that's not the most recent 2 years. I don't like to see lapsed donors, but that deep loyalty, that deep commitment, right? That's what you're looking for. And you want folks who are roughly 55 to 60 and over. The reason for that, that's about the age where people start thinking about their estate plan as a way of giving back to the causes that have been important to them. And notice I didn't say that's when they first do their estate plan. By no means. We should have an estate plan, a will. We're talking about wills today. We should have a will when we're in our 20s, early 30s, certainly by the time we have children, if there are children, because you got to deal with guardianship issues. But when you're much, much younger, you should have your will in place. But 55 to 60, that's when people, as I said, start thinking about giving back to those causes that have been important to them. So you're looking for the consistent donors who are roughly that age and over. You also want to look to your board for leadership, right? They are the volunteer leaders at your nonprofit. So this is a new venture, a new program, planned giving program. We look for their support from it, for it. So I like to see 100% participation among the board. Everybody on your board should have your organization in their will. That's a great testimonial that you can share with other folks that you're asking to invest in your work. When you can say, look, the board knows us best. They see our financials in and out. They know our programs and our work in and out. And each one of them has invested in our long term by including us in their wills. So that's a great testimonial. I like to see the 100%. And for boards, I would suspend that age threshold that I was recommending. Folks in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they can have you in their will if they're on your board. I have a couple of mandatory takeaways. I hope this is not too subtle. Is this coming across okay? Is this coming around? You getting this? Did I say anything when I was just talking about prospects? Did I say anything about the size of those 20 gifts in however many years? I didn't, because I don't care if those were $5 gifts. If those were $25 gifts in 20 or 25 years, or 22 or 18 years, $5 gifts each time, that person is planning for you very, very often. And maybe they could give more, but they've chosen to give small gifts. They are an ideal planned giving prospect. So please, you're leaving money on the table if you're only looking at your major donors, your wealthy donors. That's a mistake in planned giving. It's not only for your wealthy donors. Folks of very modest means who make small gifts can include you in their wills. So this is where we are, just a little overview. We looked at what plan giving is and who your best prospects are. What's coming up next is where you get your program started and how plan giving fits in the pandemic era. They got the marketing ideas coming up, continuing ed, and your questions. Please do put your questions in. Love to have your questions at the end. So this is where to get started. Oh my, you know what? Oh, that's egregious. Look at this. Where to get started? How to get started. Oh, that's terrible. That's bad. Oh, that's poor. When Nicole sends you that survey, remind her. Tony's doesn't proofread. I don't know. Say something. Where and how. All right. Forgive me. Let's call it how to get started. And you'll see if you take a look at the first letter of each bullet, the astute among you may have noticed that I spelled out JMT Consult for our hosts, right? A little homage to JMT Consulting for hosting us. So things might be a little awkwardly worded perhaps, but the information is still right here. There's no shortchanging, not to worry about that. So just don't expect to be told about what we're talking about now. Gifts by will, charitable bequests. These are gifts in people's wills, as I said earlier, alongside their husband, their wife, their children, their grandchildren in their will is a gift for your nonprofit. And the reason I say just don't expect to be told is because for everyone who does tell you that they've included you in their will, the national average is that there's another 7 to 8 folks who have also included you in their will, but they're never going to tell you. You may give them lots of opportunities on reply cards to check a little box that says, I've included you in my will. You may talk to them and encourage people to tell you because you want to be able to thank them, right? But for everyone that tells you, there's roughly another 7 to 8 for whom it's just so personal and so private, and they don't want to be asked to do more. And they just want to stay anonymous, that they're not going to tell you. Okay. So that's why I say, don't expect to be told, but that's good news. Now that, I can't say when you get your very first commitment, someone does tell you that there's another 7 or 8 out there. It may not happen immediately, but as your program grows, as you get more and more people in your planned giving recognition society, that national average will become truer and truer. Bequests are the most popular planned gift by far. Expect to see 75 to 90% of all your planned gifts forever be gifts in people's wills. And I challenge you to name the biggest charities you can think of. I'm not sure about whether this applies in France, Kareem, but in the US, name any big charity. They have Harvard University with a $25 billion endowment. I assure you, at least 3/4 of their planned gifts are the simple gifts we're talking about, gifts by will. So I've got a little lesson about that. I've got another mandatory takeaway related to this coming up very soon. The average charitable bequest in the US is $35,000. That is many multiples of the average annual gift, which is about $2,400 to $2,500 for average. Yes. So there's a lot of money potential, a lot of giving potential for your nonprofit in wills, because that is the average charitable bequest in the US. And if anything, that's a little low estimate. I tend to be conservative. I've seen much higher estimates. I'm comfortable with this. You can rest assured with that $35,000 average in the US. You can't believe it. Sometimes when you look back over giving history, go into the next bullet, those two go together. When someone has told you that they are in your will, or you found out because they have died and you've been notified, you go to your database and you look at their giving history. It's happened to me it's probably been thousands of times now. I've been doing planned giving since 1997. Chills to look at the consistency of the giving over decades. It's amazing how loyal some folks are. But the gifts may have been small, so these donors never rose to the level of, major donor, or they didn't attract the attention of your fundraisers because they were giving at a low level, so they weren't on the radar. But when you look back, or hopefully it's when someone tells you that they have made this commitment, that they have put you in their will, and of course you're effusively thanking them, and then you go back to your office, you look at the database, and you see how loyal their giving has been. It's amazing. It's amazing how loyal some folks can be. Remember, those most loyal donors are your best planned giving prospects. Non-wealthy donors love it. I've already kind of said that. This is ideal for folks of modest means, predominantly because there's no lifetime cost, right? It's paid after death. It's paid from their estate. That's the main reason that this is very appealing to your lower level donors. The privacy is also important. Again, for a lot of folks who won't tell you, that's another reason why donors, well, wealthy or non-wealthy, why donors generally are attracted by the gift by will. You need to respect your small lifetime donors. I needed a you there for consult, right? So you need to respect your small lifetime donors. And I know a lot of people like to say modest gifts. I say small gifts. I'm not commenting on the person's character. They're not small people. They just make small gifts. But I know some people prefer to say modest giving, modest gifts. Okay, I say small. However you call it, when people make those gifts, I hope that every gift to your organization, regardless of the size, is acknowledged, right? At a minimum. And then, of course, as the gifts grow, then there's more and more attention paid. But to these folks who make small gifts to your nonprofit, I hope that you are acknowledging those small gifts, because those folks may very well have capacity to do a lot more, including in their will. They may be testing you out with their low level, with their small gifts. So every gift needs to be acknowledged. You need to respect those small lifetime donors. You're likely to get cash. Again, I've been doing this since 1997, so I would say probably 98, 99% of the gifts I've ever seen in wills have been very straightforward, very simple gifts of cash. But you could get anything of value, right? We're all familiar with wills and how they work. You could get anything of value, but it's very, very rare. I wouldn't want you to get wrapped around the axle thinking, well, what if we get a gift that we don't know how to deal with it? It's real estate or something, or some collection of art or something. Those are very, very rare. Don't look for reasons not to go ahead with planned giving. This certainly is not one of them. Well, there aren't any, but this certainly is not among them. The overwhelming majority of gifts are gifts of cash. And the thing is, do you need to go beyond bequests? As I had just teased a couple of minutes ago, I have another subtle takeaway for you related to that. Mandatory takeaway. Notice I'm not even comfortable just saying, I'm not content to just call them takeaways. Mandatory takeaway. You got to take these two things away. This is it. There's only two of them. You can have a very respectable planned giving program and never go beyond bequests. Because again, that's 75 to 90% of the gifts that you're going to capture if you did go further. So at least 3/4 of the gifts you're going to have anyway. You never, I'm telling you the truth, go your program 15, 20, 25 years from now, you could still be promoting just gifts by will and have an enormously respectable planned giving program for your nonprofit. If you decide to go further, we know you don't have to, ever, but if you should, I'm going to breeze through some of the alternatives, just so you get a very, very high level idea of what else is out there. Living trusts, these are non-charitable trusts that are set up by donors who want to expedite their the distribution of their estate and you can be a beneficiary of a living trust. The IRA rollover, that's what it's commonly called. Technically, it's called a qualified charitable distribution. That's for folks who are 70 and a half and over. They can make a direct gift directly from their IRA to your nonprofit. Life insurance can be a very good planned gift. You can be a beneficiary of a life insurance policy, or someone could actually give you ownership of a policy where they keep paying the premiums, but you own the policy. Financial asset beneficiary, that goes along with the first way that I mentioned about life insurance, that you could be a beneficiary, I said, of a life insurance policy. Well, you can be a beneficiary of any financial asset that has a death clause. It's called payable on death or transfer on death. You may have filled these out yourselves. Some checking and savings accounts have them, brokerage accounts, IRAs of all different types, 401ks. Who gets what's left in whatever the asset is when you die. So that's how you might be familiar with them. And your nonprofit can be named as one of those death beneficiaries of those kinds of assets. If you decide to go further still, charitable gift annuities, that's a method through which your donors get income for their lifetimes. One or two people can get income for life, and then what remains in the gift at their deaths becomes a gift to your nonprofit. Charitable remainder trusts, those are similar to gift annuities, charitable gift annuities, in that it's lifetime income for your donors. And then after a number of years or at their death, what remains is a gift to your nonprofit. What distinguishes the charitable remainder trusts from the charitable gift annuities is that the remainder trusts are typically done at higher dollar levels. 6 figures usually minimum for remainder trusts. The retained life estate, that's a real estate gift where your donor continues to live in the real estate for the rest of their lives. And then at their death, that real estate is transferred to you. And charitable lead trusts, these are typically only done by very wealthy donors. The reason is the charitable lead trust is income to your nonprofit. And then at the donor's death or after a number of years, what remains goes back to the donor or to their heirs, right? They're rare and they're only done by folks who are wealthy because it's a sacrifice of income. The income is going to your nonprofit. Most of us, 99% of us, I'll hazard, are trying to accumulate income, increase income. So the charitable lead trusts are rare. I've only done a couple of those in 25 years, 24 years. I don't want to overstate my my experience. 24 years plan giving. I've done like 2 of those in 24 years. Those are rare. But just a little overview, that's all, of some of the other things that are out there. Your focus, our focus today, of course, is those gifts by will, the charitable bequests. So here's what we've done so far. Coming up now, how plan giving fits in our pandemic time, and then the marketing ideas, continuing ed. And again, your questions, please. I do my best to channel you and to anticipate questions, but I doubt I can channel everything and anticipate everything that you're thinking, that you're questioning. So please put your questions in the Q&A and there'll be time for them at the end. So how does plan giving fit now in our pandemic, right? There was a time, I would say it was like March of last year to about July or August of last year, when it was inappropriate to be talking about planned giving. We didn't know what this pandemic was going to look like. People were scared, right? Jobs were in flux. We couldn't see relatives. I mean, cast yourself back there. That was not the time to be talking about a gift by will for even the best prospects, right? But that time has passed. Again, July or August of last year, 2020. That time has passed. The right folks, those right potential donors, those prospects that I talked about, they are ready to hear about what your long-term needs are. And they have been for a while. So you needn't be reluctant, because we're still in the pandemic, to talk about folks the right folks giving to you through their will. Okay. It's still, it is again appropriate to have these kinds of conversations. I've been doing it often for over a year now. I do suggest, because we can't be as close to folks, that you be more intentional about your cultivation. You put more thought into cultivating those plan giving prospects, all right? Without being annoying, of course. It's a fine line. Sometimes you don't know. I mean, have I been in touch with this person too much? You have to feel them out and sense them, right? Your donors. There's no one rule for everybody, but I do want you to be intentional but thoughtful about your cultivation of your plan giving prospects. And I've got some ideas down below. But just in terms of Zoom, offer it, but for folks 55 to 60 and over, so right now, maybe at the 55 to 60 age, Zoom is not an issue for them at all. They'd love to get on a Zoom call with you. But when you get folks in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, Zoom is a different story. And sure, it's a much heavier lift. It's much tougher for folks in their 70s, in their 90s than in their 70s. But even so, even folks in their 70s, 80s, they might be willing to do it with their children and grandchildren, but for you, they just prefer the phone. So you got to sense people out, you can offer it, but that's why I say offer Zoom, but don't expect a lot. Because for a lot of folks, it's just, they'll figure it out for friends and family, but not for you, basically. And I've had that, not for me too. So be multi-channel, and personal as you're being thoughtful about your cultivation. All these, there's nothing new here. No breakthrough moments here. Phone, handwritten notes. I'm a big fan of handwritten notes. They stand out, especially for folks in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Don't be surprised you get a handwritten note back. Those folks grew up writing notes by hand, so they stand out. Birthday anniversary cards, of course, those are terrific opportunities to be in touch with folks. I have a little tip for you on anniversary. You don't know the anniversary of a wedding. How about the anniversary of the first gift that they made to your nonprofit? You go back in your database and see when that first gift was. And if you can get that date and then send them a note or pick up the phone and call, you're celebrating an anniversary they have no idea of, and they will be touched, I assure you. So, little tip. First gift anniversary. Email for the folks who use it. Again, we're dealing with folks, potential donors who are 70s, 80s, and 90s. Their comfort with email is going to vary, right? So that's why I say for the folks who use it, for folks who are comfortable with it. I was working with someone who she just a couple of weeks ago turned 98. And in one of our phone calls, I was helping her to find the reply button to reply to my email. She had emailed me before. So it wasn't the first time I'd emailed her testing it out. We had emailed back and forth before, but on that particular day, she was having trouble finding the reply button. So, something simple like that for folks who aren't that comfortable with email, it can be a challenge. So you want to be thoughtful about that and aware. Naturally, you keep up your mass marketing, not suggesting that you're not keeping in touch with your plan giving prospects in all the ways that you keep in touch with other folks. Interest has increased during the pandemic. In November of last year, Martz and Lundy did a survey of several hundred plan giving programs and found a 62% of them said that they were experiencing increased interest in gifts by will, specifically, exactly what we're talking about. So now that was November of last year. So almost, it's 10 months now. But I think it still applies. There's still heightened awareness of folks and their own, their mortality, their estate planning. So I think there is still considerable interest in planned giving. If commitments come slow, don't get discouraged. This is a long-term process. you may have heard the like the fundraising saying or wisdom, or 6 no's and you're halfway to a yes, right? Planned giving is a long-term cultivation process for a lot of folks. So if the commitments aren't coming, keep up your cultivation. I cite Glengarry Glen Ross there. If there are any Al Pacino, Alan Arkin, I love Alan Arkin. Who else?
Jack Lemmon.
Jack Lemmon, thank you. Jack Lemmon fans, Kevin Spacey, Ed Harris. Oh, it's quite a cast. Any fans of those actors? You may know Glengarry Glen Ross. Alec Baldwin has a short but very impactful. Basically, he kicks off the. That makes him the protagonist. Is that who kicks off a story? I'm not sure, but he has a very impactful monologue, and in that he says, because he's talking to a bunch of cutthroat real estate salesmen, right? That cast I just named, they're all shyster real estate salesmen, and he says ABC, always be closing, always be closing. Well, so I'm borrowing from Alec Baldwin's monologue and suggesting that you always be cultivating, because you are planting seeds. As I said, it is a long-term cultivation process for a lot of donors. But planned giving is long-term fundraising, right? It's about the long-term needs, sustainability of your nonprofit. So you do have to have a long-term mindset for planned giving, irrespective of pandemic or not, right? So I've got some marketing ideas for you. I hope the questions are coming in. Please, Q&A. Now, it's got to be questions around planned giving in the pandemic, right? I mean, did I assuage all possible concerns? I don't know if that's possible for me to do. So please put your questions in. Love to have your questions at the end. Marketing, some marketing strategies for events. You're doing speaking points for someone, a board member, your CEO, put a couple of sentences in about how easy it is for folks to include your nonprofit in their will, that you're now encouraging gifts by will. I've worked with some nonprofits where they call it a wills campaign. That's a possibility. But if you don't like the campaign idea, just we're encouraging gifts by will. It's so important for our long-term to have those long-term gifts. It's so easy for you to include us in your wills. Please just talk to Tony at the end, or however they get in touch, right? Whoever they should be in touch with, whether a virtual or in-person event, makes no difference, right? Also, you may be doing a program for the event. If it's a virtual event, the digital program, little sidebar, whether it's print or digital. I love sidebars. You'll see them come up a couple times. So easy, like in 30, 40 words, you can say what I just said. We're encouraging gifts by will. It's so easy for you to include us. It's so important for our long-term. And here's who to be in touch with, right? So simple sidebar and a couple speaking points. For print, again, sidebars. Now I say sidebars or articles. If you want to sit down and write an article, 200 or 300 word article probably for your newsletter, by all means, please do. But the sidebars are easier. And I'm trying to give you marketing ideas that are low lift, low cost. So again, I like the sidebar idea. For your newsletter, your annual report. Annual report is a great place to recognize your donors. You're probably doing that for your other donors. I know a lot of organizations include donors in the annual report. Through the years, when I was a planned giving director, not a consultant in planned giving, but doing planned giving as a frontline fundraiser at nonprofits, I sat in those meetings where we pored over the donor lists 2-3 times to make sure that the junior is correct and that the spelling is right and how do they want to be recognized, et cetera. So I've sat in those meetings. I've done that proofreading. If you're recognizing your other donors in your annual report, don't your planned giving donors deserve that same recognition, right? And of course, it's an inducement for other folks to join them. Some digital ideas, again, sidebars or articles, e-newsletter. It doesn't matter whether your newsletter is print or digital. Simple page on your website. Yes, 1, maybe 2 pages. That's all you need. Picture of a donor or donor couple, maybe a pull quote from the donor, some explanation of how important these gifts are to your nonprofit, right? Simple plan giving page or pages, and pages is like 2. You don't need a lot. Please don't spend money on those subscription services where they sell you like a plan giving encyclopedia and plan giving web page calculators that, you know, folks click through. And of course, the identity is yours, but anybody who looks at the address bar can tell they're no longer on your site, the web address bar. You don't need encyclopedias and calculators. There's nothing to calculate. There's nothing to look up in a plan giving encyclopedia. We're talking about wills. Wills are so simple. Everybody knows what a will is. Everybody knows how they work, and everybody knows that they need one. Those 3 things are in your favor. You don't need to pay for subscriptions to calculators and encyclopedias, please. And your email signature. Everybody in your organization could put something simple like this. I spelled it right out for you. You can include us in your will. Ask me how. Direct mail. Now, this is not plan giving devoted direct mail because that's expensive, and I'm trying to keep it low cost. You could do that, but I'm talking here about other mail pieces. Drop a buck slip in those packages. Now, by buck slip, what I mean is they get printed 3 on a page, and then they get cut up, and that third of a page that has your sidebar. There you go again. You're repurposing that sidebar on a 1/3 of a page buck slip. You drop it in your package. It doesn't weigh hardly anything, so it doesn't increase the postage cost for your package, whether it's annual giving or if it's a newsletter you're sending, whatever it is. No increase in postage cost. So you drop those in those mailings, and use your reply envelope flaps for a checkoff. Oh my goodness, this is egregious. Look at that. Check of. That's supposed to be check off. That's 2 mistakes. I think we should wrap it up right now. This is check off. So what the idea is, if you can overlook that egregious error, is that on the back of the reply envelopes. So the next time you print a batch of reply envelopes, folks are sending back to you, not BREs, the official postal envelopes. You can't do this on the back of those. But if you're just doing envelopes that are not the business reply envelopes, with just your address pre-printed, on the back of the flap, you put a little checkoff box. I'd like information about including your organization name in my will. So people put a check off on that back flap, and then whoever opens your envelopes, when they come back to you, of course, that person needs to know to flag those folks who have checked that box for you. So this is where we have been together. We got the continuing ed coming up right now. If you'd like to know a little bit more about planned giving, I do have this free how-to guide, Unleash the Game-Changing Power of Planned Giving at Your Nonprofit. It's easy to get. It's a free download. Just go to tony.ma/guide right there. Planned Giving Accelerator. That is a 6-month membership course where I'm going to teach you step-by-step how to start, how to launch your planned giving program. So if you'd like to spend more time together, the next Planned Giving Accelerator course starts in January. And aside from learning from me, there is enormous benefit from learning from your peers. You'll be in a class together, and the peer learning is way beyond what I imagined. So there's that, as well as my teaching you step by step. If you're interested in Planned Giving Accelerator, there's the URL, plannedgivingaccelerator.com. There's a book. If you're a book reader, I recommend this one, Planned Giving Simplified by Robert Sharp Sr. The beauty of planned giving, especially the wills we're talking about, but this book goes further. But much of the beauty of much of planned giving is it doesn't change a lot. So that book's been around for a while, but it's a very good explanation on a basic level of planned giving. And I host a podcast, Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. We've got over 13,000 listeners each week, making it the #1 podcast for nonprofits. It's folks like you. It's folks in small and mid-sized nonprofits. I'm picking the brains of experts in all kinds of areas, not just planned giving and not just fundraising, although we certainly do talk about all the fundraising topics, but board relationships and other volunteer management, technology, social media, marketing, branding, legal topics that are important. Everything I think small and mid-sized shops struggle with. And if you would like to find that anywhere you listen to your podcast, the podcast is very findable. I'm very findable. So that's our continuing ed. Now it's time for the all-important Q&A. Questions. Yes,
Yeah.
perfect. We've got 15 minutes for questions. Yes, ideal. What do we have there? What do we have?
Thank you.
Natalie?
We do. We have a few questions. So we have one asking, what is the source of the 35,000? Is that national, and is it surveyed over what period of time and across how many nonprofits?
Oh, that's a lot of questions. I don't know how many nonprofits. The survey is not more than a couple of years old. I'm pretty sure it was a national survey. I could point you to either to the survey or the coverage of the survey. If you want to email me, tony@tonymartignetti.com.
And we also have another one. What is the average age of people writing a will in the US?
Oh boy, these are insightful ones. The average age of folks writing a will. Yeah, I know it's much higher than it ought to be. Shoot, I want to say it's in the 70s, low 70s, but I'm not certain. I do know it's much younger. Sorry, it's much older than it should be. But that's not discouragement. There are millions of people, tens of millions of Americans who have wills. So don't be discouraged by the fact that folks don't do it when they ought to. Yeah.
How do we know we are ready to launch planned giving?
Well, I look for a nonprofit that is at least 5 years old and has individual donors who are 55 to 60, right? If you've got those things in place, then I think you're ready for planned giving. I like to see at least 5 years of history because, we're asking people to have faith that your nonprofit is going to live longer than they do. And in those first 5 years, while there's enormous, naturally, passion and good wishes and hopes, there's not much of a track record. So I like to see at least 5 years and the individual donors over 55 to 60.
And then someone else said, my org is turning 20 next year. We feel this, which we feel is a nice milestone to introduce planned giving. I have asked and identified 2 planned giving donors, folks who have told me, and these are her questions. How many people do I need in my legacy circle before I can announce it publicly? And is there any benefit to a clever name, or is legacy circle the way to go?
Cheryl Fleischer's going to know that I'm going to say about legacy circle. Okay, so you have 2 questions, the name and how many do you need before you publicly announce it? I think you can welcome folks to your recognition society right now with there being no one. Someone's got to be first. I'm not embarrassed when there's nobody in the recognition society and we can tell folks that they're among the first. I say find a name, which I'm getting to very, very shortly. Find a name and invite folks to it. Now, in terms of the name, yes, I believe there is enormous benefit to having a clever name that is unique, iconic to your nonprofit. I urge you not to do the Legacy Circle Heritage Fund, Heritage Circle Legacy Society Fund Circle. They're ubiquitous, they're generic. Pick something iconic to your organization. I'll give you a couple of ideas. Could be the founder, assuming that his or her name is widely recognized. Could be the year of your founding, the 1975. Whoever asked, who's asking the question, by the way? I should have asked. I like to shout folks out. Who's this question from?
It's from, yeah, I'll speak. It's from Nicole Brown, and I'm the individual giving at 826 Valencia, founded by Dave Eggers in San Francisco.
Okay, thank you for the question, Nicole. So you could have, so the founder is one, so it could be the Dave Eggers Society, if he's widely known, right, within your organization, not outside your organization, by the way. I don't give a hoot if nobody outside your organization knows the significance of the name of your recognition society. I could care less. It's not for everybody outside your organization. It's for those who love your work and your mission, and they've been giving into it consistently. Consistently. Oh, we got to shut that off. Excuse me. That was not my cell. My cell I already silenced. The landline snuck in, which nobody important has the number to. Yes, so I don't care. It's for your organization. It's for your most loyal donors. Those are the folks who need to understand the significance of the name that you choose. And so I gave you a couple. So the founder, the year you were founded. If you have a physical space, I've seen the address of a building when that's widely known, like the 1225. Might be their address might be 1225 East 52nd Street in wherever. So it might be the 1225 Society. Pick something that's widely known in your organization and unique to your organization. Cheryl Fleischer, I saw your hand come up. What do you want to say? What?
I said, don't agonize over the name, because we did, and it slows you down. Just get it going, and naming it can be another way that you can contact those people who have pledged, decided to become members.
You can announce the name. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheryl Fleischer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cheryl.